This is the This Week in Amateur Radio podcast, now celebrating our 23rd year of service to the worldwide amateur radio community. We are your all-amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service of the air. This is edition number 1226, with a release and air date of Saturday, August 27th, 2022. Please take the program to your air following the upcoming cue tone. Hello, and welcome aboard. Covering everything that is amateur radio and the wider world of communications, you're on This Week in Amateur Radio. We are North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service of the air. Here are the stories for release around the earth as we come to air with edition number 1226 of This Week in Amateur Radio. The ARRL 2021 annual report is now available to download. We will tell you all about it. The League is also busy with the International Telecommunications Union working on preparations for the upcoming World Radio Conference in 2023. We will have details on that. Here's an interesting one. Hackers at the recent DEF CON convention in Las Vegas revealed that the emergency alert system here in the United States is vulnerable to cyber attack. QRZ and Gigaparts team up to announce that their new joint ham Jumpstart program is available for new amateurs. There was a new record set for the attendance at the recent Huntsville Hamfest. We will have all the details. The RSGB Transatlantic Centenary tests are coming up soon. Races for director and vice director are set in the Southeastern division. We will tell you who the candidates are. A radio amateur and inventor secures a patent on Invisibility Cloak detection. We will tell you all about meta materials. A California amateur claims top honors for his film documentary, and a real southern down-home QSO party is coming up, and we will have all the information and introduce you to the old scratching post in this week's report. These headline stories will come to you in a moment along with our regular special features. We'll visit with Bruce Page, KK5DO, and get an update from AMSAT and what's new with all of those amateur satellites in orbit. Our technology reporter, Leo Laporte, W6TWT, will talk about all the latest news and developments in technology, science, and communications. Australia's own Arnold Benshoff, VK6FLAB, will tackle this week's topic, consideration in amateur radio. Our own amateur radio historian, Bill Continelli, W2XOI, returns with another edition of his summer series, Amateur Radio History Headlines. This week, Bill takes us above the fold to explore amateur radio news in the mid-1970s. And our tower climbing and antenna master, Greg Stoddard, KF9MP, will put aside his tools and climbing belt for the last time for the last segment of his six-part series on how to submit a successful public service announcement to local broadcast media to promote your local hamfest or club special activity. All of that and a whole lot more is straight ahead as North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service. This Week in Amateur Radio takes to the air right now. Reporting from our headquarters studio here in the suburban area surrounding Albany, New York, I'm George, W2XBS.
And reporting from the newsroom in Half Moon, New York, I'm Terry Saunders, N1KIN.
And this week reporting from our news bureau in Cortlandville, New York, in my home studio, I'm Chris Perrine, KB2FAF.
And reporting from our news bureau in Rochester, New York, along the southern shore of Lake Ontario, I'm Dave Wilson, WA2HOY.
And reporting from our amateur radio outpost atop the Catskill Mountains here in western New York State, where it's still maximum summertime, I'm Don Hulick, K2ATJ.
And reporting from a drizzly Troy, New York news bureau, I'm Eric, KD2RJX.
And reporting from our news bureau in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where we are looking forward to autumn's arrival, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR.
And now with this week's lead story, here is Terry Saunders, N1KIN.
Leading off the news this week, ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, has published its 2021 annual report. The report summarizes ARRL's program and fiscal activity for the year. With more details on the annual report, we go to John Ross, KD8IDJ, who files this report from League headquarters.
In his introductory remarks, ARRL President Rick Roderick, K5UR, said that the organization moved steadily forward in 2021, gaining momentum after the challenges that 2020 brought. It began bit by bit in the early months of the year with headquarters staff returning to the office and reached a turning point on July 15th, the day we rededicated ARRL headquarters and reopened the building and W1AW to our members, Roderick said. He also noted that the rededication ceremony gave us all an opportunity to reflect on where ARRL has been and affirm where we are headed, and expressed excitement for what's coming next. ARRL CEO Dave Minster, NA2AA, dug into some of the organization's 2021 achievements in his opening remarks, citing the success of ARRL's end-fed half-wave antenna kit, new forays into video content, and hiring into key roles. Field Services Manager Mike Walters, NW8ZY, Director of Emergency Management Josh Johnston, KE5MHV, and Education and Alerting Manager Steve Goodgame, K5ATA. The theme of the 2021 report's Back Together referred to the many unions and reunions that occurred throughout the year, from being able to attend the in-person Hamfest once again to partnering with the Netherlands-based HF Kits to produce the antenna kit, as well as teaming up with the Radio Society of Great Britain at the end of the year to commemorate the centenary of the ARRL-sponsored transatlantic test. Included in the report is ARRL's Report to America, which highlights recent instances of ham radio operators serving their communities by providing emergency communications. These stories include amateur radio activations and response for storms, fire, and other disasters when all else fails. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
The 56-page annual report recounts and summarizes the activities of all of ARRL's departments and includes a complete 2021 fiscal report. ARRL ended 2021 with 158,238 members, a total that was slightly under the year-end goal of 160,084, but gained 29,027 new members, which represented an 11% increase from 2020. The ARRL 2021 annual report is available for download at www.arrl.org/annual-reports. Again, www.arrl.org/annual-reports.
You are listening to North America's premier news and information service for the amateur radio hobbyist. We are This Week in Amateur Radio.
Immediately following the conclusion of WRC 19, work began to prepare for World Radio Communication Conference 2023. The ITU's first conference preparatory meeting 2023 in November of 2019 assigned the various WRC 23 agenda items and topics to specific International Telecommunication Union working parties within the radio communication study groups. The study groups are broadly divided as spectrum management, radio wave propagation, satellite services, terrestrial services, broadcasting services, and the science services. Each study group has several working parties where the work is performed for each WRC 23 agenda item. The results of the first sessions of the conference preparatory meeting for WRC 23 contains the agenda. Preparatory work on each agenda items is designated and assigned by WRC 23 to the responsible and interested working parties. Several WRC 23 agenda items related to amateur radio service or the amateur satellite service. ARRL participates in the relevant ITUR working parties, as well as the regional or SciTel preparation of proposals that addresses each item as they may impact amateur radio. ARRL works very closely with the members of the IARU team on all aspects of the WRC 23 agenda items. International Telecommunications Union Working Party 5A, for example, is responsible for studies related to the land mobile service, excluding IMT, and including wireless access in fixed services, and is also responsible for studies related to the amateur and amateur satellite services. Working Party 5A is considered the home for amateur radio within the ITU. Working Group 5A-1 is the Amateur and Amateur Satellite Service subgroup, chaired by Dale Hughes, VK1DSH, on the Australian delegation, while the ARRL's John Siverling, WB3ERA, serves as the alternate chairman. This is where the work on revisions to Recommendation ITURM.1732, or Characteristics of System Operating in the Amateur and Amateur Satellite Service for Use in Sharing Studies, and where the studies toward WRC 23 Agenda Item 9.1b were performed. World Radio Conference 23 will consider the mid-bands for IMT 2020 and beyond. Under Agenda Item 1.2, to consider identification of the frequency bands 3300 to 3400 MHz, 3600 to 38 MHz, 6425 to 7025 MHz, 7025 to 7125 MHz, and 10.0 to 10.5 GHz for IMT, including possible additional allocations through the mobile service on a primary basis. ARRL is advocating the retention of the amateur secondary allocation of 3300 to 3400 MHz in regions 2 and 3, as well as opposing the identification of the 10.0 to 10.5 GHz band for IMT. Two working parties, WP5A and WP4C, are working on the topic to determine if additional measures are required to ensure protection of the radio navigation satellite or space-to-Earth service in the band 1240 to 1300 MHz. The amateur and amateur radio satellite services have successfully coexisted with all the primary services in the range 1240 to 1300 MHz for many years. ARRL advocates the position that any additional regulatory, operational, or technical measures incorporated into the radio regulations are unnecessary. Specific proposed methods to address each WRC 23 agenda item will be contained in the CPM report, which will be finalized in 2022. Throughout the preparation process leading up to WRC 23, ARRL actively participates in the FCC's WRC Advisory Committee. The ARRL is vigilant on several agenda items that may impact amateur radio, such as the item to address the Earth Exploration Satellite Service active spaceborne radar sounders around 45 MHz. ARRL work to protect the adjacent 50 to 54 MHz amateur band. Another area that earned ARRL's attention was the spectrum needs and potential new allocations to the mobile satellite service for future development of narrowband mobile satellite systems.
Federal Communications Commission Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel recently proposed raising the minimum broadband speed requirements in the United States to 100 megabits per second for downloads and 20 megabits per second for uploads. The move was generally well received but long overdue at a time when median download and upload speeds among service providers in the United States still rank below several other nations. Still, Fiber Broadband Association President and CEO Gary Bolton said the FCC's ongoing focus on speed minimums is a misguided approach. Bolton told Fierce Telecom magazine via email, "Our industry has moved beyond the speed test and is now focused on the experience test. We would encourage the FCC to not set new broadband definitions that are already obsolete, but to look forward to the future and establish definitions that will support the vision and innovation of the metaverse and beyond. They can do that with definitions that support symmetric speeds, single-digit latency requirements, and enable concurrency." He explained that these are the criteria that metaverse driver Meta, owner of Facebook, identified during a keynote speech at the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber Connect 2022 conference in Nashville last month. As we look to the immediate future, we are at the early stages of the next version of the internet, the metaverse. Meta delivered a keynote that described their vision of the metaverse, and to fulfill that vision, they outlined 3 key criteria for the nation's broadband network. These criteria include symmetric bandwidth, being able to send as much information as you receive, low latency, significantly reducing the time it takes for information to go from its source to its destination, and concurrency, providing a consistent quality of experience, regardless of the number of participants or where they're physically located. Bolton continued, "Fortunately, we're at the beginning of the largest investment in broadband in history, with nearly $130 billion in state and federal subsidies that are being deployed. That funding will largely fund fiber projects that will deliver nearly unlimited broadband capacity and ultra-low latency. In any areas not built with fiber, the programs have minimum build requirements of 100 over 100 megabits per second or 100 over 20 megabits per second." He added, in short, the FCC's plan to move their definition of broadband from 25 over 3 megabits per second to 100 over 20 megabits per second is a moot point.
There was record attendance at the Huntsville Ham Fest, which was held August 20th and 21st, 2022 in Alabama. John Ross, KD8IDJ, has assembled this special report on the Huntsville Ham Fest.
The event hosted the ARRL Southeastern Division Convention. Chairman Mark Brown, N4BCD, reported attendance of 5,420. The event drew big crowds, said ARRL Director of Public Relations and Innovation Bob Interbitson, NQ1R. "It was particularly happy, and I was particularly happy to see so many young hams enjoying the convention." A youth lounge sponsored by Flex Radio attracted the participation of 175 young hams and young prospective hams. The lounge included a variety of hands-on activities, including a demonstration of a remotely accessible radio station. The demonstration was led by team members from Remote Ham Radio Youth Program, Connor Black, W4IPC, Colin Pokowitz, WWOCJ, and Patrick Galthrop, W9GGG. On Saturday afternoon, 18-year-old Audrey McElroy, KM4BUN, was presented with the 2022 Bill Pasternak AWA6ITF Memorial Amateur Radio Newsline Young Ham of the Year Award. Following the award presentation, McElroy said, "I hope that in the future I can continue to bring more youth into amateur radio as well as more women into the STEM system."
Representatives from CQ Communications, Yaesu USA, Heil Sound, Radio Waves Antennas, and Gigaparts had remarks and gifts for Audrey. Also attending the convention was Abigail Barker, KI5RCX of Conway, Arkansas. Earlier this year, Barker was awarded the Walter Gollinghouse K5DSL Scholarship administered by the ARRL Foundation.
You're listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, available worldwide as a podcast from our web at www.twiar.net.
ARRL, Amateur Radio on the International Space Station, announced that simultaneous operations of the ARRL voice repeater and digital automatic packet reporting system, or APRS, communications on the space station is now a reality. John Ross, KD8IDJ, has more in this report from League headquarters.
Current ARRL operations include voice repeater transmissions with the JVC Kenwood TMD710GA in the Columbus module, and APRS operations from the identical radio in the Cerveda service module. Packet operations are on 145.825 megahertz. The Columbus module radio uses the call sign NA1SS, and the new radio in the Cerveda module uses RS0ISS. Aside from the call signs, the radios are identical, and packet operations are both the same as before. You can use RS0ISS, ARISS, or APRSAT as the packet path. Both radios are expected to be running full-time except during educational contacts, extravehicular activities, EVAs, and docking maneuvers. Final checkouts and equipment activation occurred on August 11th. ARRL International Chair Frank Bauer, KA3HDO, said that simultaneous operation of APRS and the voice repeater on ISS is transformative for ARRL. It represents a key element for our ARRL 2.0 initiative, providing interactive capabilities 24/7 that inspire, engage, and educate youth and lifelong learners, especially lifelong learners in ham radio operations. Our heartfelt thanks to Sergei Serburov, RV3DR, for making this crucial ARRS 2.0 initiative become a reality. Meanwhile, Rosalie White, K1STO, one of 2 delegates to ARRS, said that the ham radio community will be very happy with the new radio operations from the ISS. She said that hams really love doing ARRS packet, crossband repeater, and slow scan TV operations. Besides the thousands who downloaded ARRS SSTV images downlinked from the ISS, we discovered that in a year's time, hams did 80,000 ARRS packet messages. We're not sure how many of them are enjoying the ARRS crossband repeater yet, but we do know it is a lot. The simultaneous operation capability is going to make many hams happy, and we know that keeping hams on the air is good for ARRL and good for amateur radio.
The ARRS Russia and USA teams have been working for several weeks to prepare the service module radio for APRS operations. ARRS Russian team member Sergei Sambarov, RV3DR, led the effort, working with Russian mission controllers and the onboard ISS cosmonauts to configure the service module radio for APRS ops. On August 11th, final checkouts were completed, and the APRS packet mod was switched on for amateur radio use. You can find operational status and expected downtimes of the ISS radios at www.arriss.org. Amateur radio on the International Space Station, or ARRS, is a cooperative venture of international amateur radio societies and the space agencies that support the International Space Station. In the United States, sponsors are ARRL, the National Association of Amateur Radio, the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation, or AMSAT, the ISS National Lab Space Station Explorers, Amateur Radio Digital Communications, and NASA's Space Communications and Navigation Program. The primary goal of ARRS is to promote exploration of science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics topics. ARRS does this by organizing scheduled contacts via amateur radio between crew members aboard the ISS and students. Before and during these radio contacts, students, educators, parents, and communities take part in hands-on learning activities tied to space, space technologies, and amateur radio.
According to ARRS Technica and a report on CNN, the United States National Broadcast Network, which transmits child abduction alerts and severe weather warnings, is becoming increasingly vulnerable to fake alerts from hackers unless state and local governments fix security weaknesses in devices that connect to the system. That was a warning delivered recently by the nation's Department of Homeland Security, which repeated its cautionary message about the U.S. Emergency Alert System at a recent session of DEF CON, a major hacking conference held in Las Vegas every year. Homeland Security officials say that ongoing vulnerabilities in the encoder and decoder devices enable hackers to transmit bogus warnings over radio and TV stations. Cybersecurity researcher Ken Pyle, who's credited with discovering the vulnerability, told reporters recently that without a necessary software update for those devices, the hackers can preempt broadcast signals, exploit web servers, and disrupt the legitimate system. He said the problem has existed for several years and has gone uncorrected. Reporting on this issue, Cable News Network had asked the Federal Communications Commission for a tally on how many devices are running the vulnerable software. The FCC had no immediate response. We will keep an eye on the story and bring you updates as they become available.
In a press release on the QRZ website, they announced the new QRZ New Ham Jumpstart, a program that will help new hams get on the air faster than ever. The program, which is jointly sponsored by QRZ and Gigaparts, will provide a free new ham welcome package to eligible applicants. Among the goodies in the first edition of the welcome package is a brand new dual-band handheld transceiver, the Explorer QRZ-1, along with a host of other sponsor-supplied goodies. This new program is designed to promote amateur radio to the masses, helping to eliminate a possible barrier to entry by providing new hams with their first radio. The Jumpstart program will provide the QRZ-1 radio to new hams who meet eligibility requirements. No purchase or subscription of any kind is necessary. The welcome package is free to those who qualify. The QRZ-1 is a brand new entry-level dual-band ham radio transceiver that has been custom manufactured for QRZ and Gigaparts. They worked with an established radio manufacturer to make a special edition radio just for new hams. Our involvement was much more than a relabeling of an existing product because several important improvements have been made. For starters, the radio firmware has been modified to make user interaction straightforward and easy to understand. In addition, the user manual was rewritten in English, not simply translated, so that new hams may grasp its operating concepts clearly. New hams who have just obtained their first license from the FCC may apply for a welcome package. Applicants must apply within 30 days of the license grant date per the FCC records. The eligible ham must have a QRZ user account and be able to log in and apply for the award. Certain types of identification, including a photo ID, will be required. This information is not shared or exchanged with any party and is used only to validate eligibility under this program. Additional shipping charges may apply when shipped outside of the contiguous 48 states. This program is available exclusively to USA licensed amateur radio operators. Some new hams may not need a new entry-level radio and might instead enjoy a full year of a QRZ premium subscription. If you opt for this choice, you will make the radio available for another newcomer and help us extend the program into the future. It's an easy way to pay it forward that others will appreciate. The program ends on October 31st, 2022. If you are or about to become eligible, please keep this in mind.
The Radio Society of Great Britain are hosting an international amateur radio activation, the Transatlantic Centenary tests on the HF bands for the entire month of December 2022 to commemorate the centenary of the achievement of amateur transatlantic communication during the transatlantic tests that were held between 1921 and 1923. December 24th, 1922 was when the very first amateur radio signal from Europe was heard in North America. This was from the RSGB station G5WS, which was established at Wandsworth in South London as part of the third transatlantic tests. Unlike the tests of the 1920s, which consisted of one-way communication, the 2022 tests will encourage worldwide two-way communication with UK and Crown dependency-based stations by having a series of awards available for making QSOs with activating special stations. The club log team have kindly agreed to provide the supporting infrastructure for the tests. In anticipation of this centenary celebration, with the assistance of Ofcom, the UK licensing authority, the RSGB have reactivated 5 call signs which they held in the 1920s. G5WS, used for the 1922 tests, the first to get across. G5AT, used for the 1923 tests. G6XX, used for the 1923 tests. G6ZZ, used for the first amateur tests on a moving railway train in 1924. G3DR, Scottish Highlands Call, GM3DR. These historic call signs will be activated by RSGB members and clubs using G5WS, G5AT, G6XX, G6ZZ, and G3DR in England, GM5WS in Scotland, GW5WS in Wales, GU5WS in Guernsey, GD5WS from the Isle of Man, GJ5WS in Jersey, and GI5WS in Northern Ireland.
You're listening to America's premier amateur radio news magazine of the air. This Week in Amateur Radio.
And now with the latest technology news and commentary from Petaluma, California. This Week in Amateur Radio is proud to present Leo Laporte.
Let's see. Don't let your interns set your passwords. Solar Winds. Remember this hack that basically allowed, we think Russia, don't know for sure, but we think Russia and the Russian secret police to spy on the Department of Defense, everybody, Microsoft, everybody. The way they did it is they hacked a security company called Solar Winds. So Congress brought the SolarWinds CEO, former CEO, I guess he got fired, I don't know, former CEO in, along with Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, to testify on Friday about how did that happen? How did that there happen? SolarWinds CEO, well, that's not former, that's current. SolarWinds CEO Sudhakar Ramakrishna was asked by Representative Rashida Tlaib. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, it was former SolarWinds CEO. He was also there, Kevin Thompson. He was asked about how come the password to get into SolarWinds updates was so easy. He said an intern did it. And not only an intern did it, but an intern did it in 2017. That's what Ramakrishna said. You know what the password the intern set was? SolarWinds 123. My favorite quote from Katie Porter, our own representative here in California. I've got a stronger password than SolarWinds 123 to stop my kids from watching too much YouTube on their iPad. You and your company were supposed to be preventing the Russians from reading Defense Department emails. You should let Katie Porter set your passwords, not your interns, I guess. That's the... Oh, boy. You may remember that stimulus funds were passed out in March, the first stimulus bill. The state of Mississippi got $1.2 billion in federal money, and you know what they decided to do? I love this. They decided to take a chunk of it, not a lot, not a huge amount. Well, they got $1.2 billion. They decided to take about, $75 million, not a huge amount, and create the Mississippi Electric Cooperatives Broadband COVID-19 Act, a lot of words, which basically said give money to internet service providers, especially in the rural, hard-to-reach areas of Mississippi where there's no service or very slow service. Give them money to build out their infrastructure so we can get internet service to the entire state. So they gave them cash, and then the grant required they matched the funds because they're going to make some money on this. 15 electric co-ops got $65 million in grants. I don't know what happened to the other $10 million. But they had to spend it. They got it in March. They had to spend it by December, which means they all went crazy trying to deploy high-speed broadband. But that's good news. That's good news. The CEO of Coast Electric Power Association, which serves the areas of Biloxi and Gulfport, by November had their customers to 100 megabit to gigabit service. 5 months took them. They did it. That's a good model for spending your tax dollars. Get them online. Beef up the internet. It's good for everything. It's good for people. It's good for business. It means you can listen to me on my podcasts. It's good for everybody. Yes. Oh, has your go home Roomba, you're drunk. Have you noticed your Roomba acting funny? Your iRobot vacuum cleaner? Some users of the Roomba i7 and S9 say that one user described their robot cleaner as acting drunk after the 3.12.8 firmware update, spinning itself around and bumping into furniture. These are the little vacuums. You've seen them probably on social media with cats riding on them. They're little circles. They wake up at night. Usually it's at night because you don't want them vacuuming during the daytime. They wake up at night and they go around and they vacuum. And they have this, software in them that says, okay, here's where furniture is, here's where stuff is, vacuum all around that, and do a pattern that gets the floor clean everywhere. After this update, Roombas were bumping into furniture, cleaning in strange patterns, just getting stuck in an open, empty area, not getting home to the dock. They have to get home to the dock after after they vacuum, they go back to charge. So they always leave just enough juice to get back to the dock. Maybe this has to do with the fact that the map the Roombas make of their house were wiped out. That's what some users are reporting. In some cases, Roombas are taking longer to cleaning the house to barely working at all. So go home, Roomba. You're drunk. There will be an update. Somebody made a browser extension. You know browser extensions? You can put these on your browser. This one works on Chrome or I think on Firefox. You have to sideload it. But the idea, it's from the Economic Security Project. The idea is it'll block any sites that ping Google, Facebook, Microsoft, or Amazon. the big four tech companies: Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon. It's called Big Tech Detective. Now, I'm not recommending it. According to Mitchell Clark in The Verge, he said, when you put it on, basically, you can't do anything. So many websites, almost all of them, including, by the way, mine, now that I think about it, contact Google, Facebook, Microsoft, or Amazon in some form or fashion. So if you put this Big Tech Detective on, it'll show you a bunch of locked pages. I guess it's for educational purposes. You certainly wouldn't want to use it all the time. But it just shows how dependent we are on four companies pretty much run the whole thing. Or at least they got their fingers in the pie. And it's a sad day. I used to do ads up in Northern California for a great electronics store. You remember, your best computer buys are always at Fry's, guaranteed. Not anymore. After 36 years in business, Fry's Electronics. In 9 states, 31 stores. Remember the store? Oh, the stores were so fun. There was one that was Egyptian. There was one that was the future. One was the past. There's actually a list. Was there one in Alice in Wonderland? Did you go to that one? Professor Laura says she liked the Alice in Wonderland store. No, they're closing down. If you go to Fry's.com, their website, they say we're going out of business permanently as a result of changes in the retail industry and the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. They began the wind down 3 days ago. In my mind, I'll always think your best computer buys are always at Fry's. There's a Wikipedia that has all of the, I think, different themes, store themes. Aztec Temple, Golf, Space Shuttle, 1950s Science Fiction, Ancient Egypt, Steampunk, Ruins of Ancient Rome, 1893 World's Fair, Manhattan Beach had Tahiti, Agricultural History, Wild West. They put all their money into that. That's the problem. City of Industry. Let's see what the City of Industry had. The Industrial Revolution, Steampunk. That's what it had. San Diego, yeah, the 1950s sci-fi. Woodland Hills, that's the Alice in Wonderland store that Professor Laura frequented. Automobile racing in Indiana because of the Indy 500, I guess. The Las Vegas Strip was all about Las Vegas. Austin had live music. Dallas, cattle ranch. Houston, oil derricks. Plano, Texas had railroads. Webster, Texas, International Space Station. Renton, Washington, regional history. A lot of them had regional history. Your best computer buys are always at Fry's. Guaranteed. Yeah, the San Jose store is the one. The Mayan Temple, Chichen Itza, was the one I went into. And Sunnyvale was history of Silicon Valley. I think I probably spent some time in there, too. Never did have a San Francisco store. And no Petaluma either. I think frankly, Amazon and Newegg and all the online places you could buy the same things probably just is the end of the line for not only Fry's, but a lot of retail outlets. It was just fun to go in. I never went shopping. I just walk in. They say men don't like shopping. Show them a Fry's. Let's see. What else is in the news? This was a flight from Cincinnati to Phoenix last weekend. The pilots saw something, and the something they saw was captured by a guy named Steve Douglas. He does an aviation blog, Deep Black Horizon, and apparently he was both listening and recording, as one does. Sometimes, it's fun to listen to the pilot chatter as they're flying over. He was able to say, thanks to Flight Radar 24 and Flight Aware, that they were over the northeast corner of New Mexico, west of Clayton, at an altitude of 37,000 feet. This is what he heard. If I could just play it, I will. Yes.
Have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
Now, I would have thought, I don't know, Steve, I thought maybe this isn't real, but apparently the American Airlines confirmed that. They said, yep, that was the transmission from Flight 2292. The FAA released a short statement. A pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21st, FAA air traffic controllers did not see any object in the area on their radar scope. So it is moving really fast. It is at 37,000 plus feet, and it has no radar signature. I don't know what it is. But I thought I'd play that for you. It's nice when you have the audio. It's probably just, chat room says, just Jeff Bezos testing out some prototypes. Probably. It's the new Amazon delivery vehicle. That makes a lot of sense. Anyway, I'm glad you were here, and I'm here, and I'll be here next week, and I hope you'll come by and bring your friends too as we talk high tech. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
Are you ready for another excursion into amateur radio history? This is Bill Continelli, W2XOY, and I'll be back in a moment with another installment of the Ancient Amateur Archives.
We pause for stations along the network to identify. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, your amateur radio and technology news magazine of the air, available as a podcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartMedia, and Spotify. And now, with this week's edition of the Ancient Amateur Archives, here's Bill Continelli, W2XOY.
This is Bill Continelli, W2XOY, with Amateur Radio History Headlines. 1974. The Electronics Industry Association proposed a new Class E CB using 2 megahertz of our 220 band. The FCC proposed a dual ladder license structure which would take privileges away from generals and technicians again and would create a new code-free communicator license. Both proposals were eventually dropped. WR prefixes begin to appear on repeater call signs. 1975 through 1976. A new repeater subband is established at 144.5 through 145.5 megahertz. Technicians now have 144.5 through 148 megahertz on 2 meters, and finally have novice privileges. Novices are given a power increase to 250 watts. The mail-order technician license is eliminated. Applicants must now appear at an FCC examination site. And the conditional class license is abolished. 1977. The FCC expands CB radio from 23 to 40 channels. Hundreds of hams purchase obsolete 23-channel CB sets at fire sale prices and convert them to 10 meters. This has been Amateur Radio History Headlines with Bill Continelli, W2XOY, for This Week in Amateur Radio.
Members of the ARRL in the Southeastern Division will choose among 3 candidates running for director and 4 candidates for vice director. Those are the only contested races in this year's election cycle for director and vice director. John Ross, KD8 IDJ, has more in this report from ARRL headquarters in Newington.
ARRL is governed by its board of directors. Elections are held for 5 of the 15 ARRL divisions each year for terms of 3 years. Candidates for director in the Southeastern Division include incumbent Mickey Baker, N4MB of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and the challengers are current Vice Director James Schilling, KG4JSZ of Haines City, Florida, and John Willis, KB4DU of Ozark, Alabama. Candidates for Vice Director include Jeff Beals, WA4AW of Loxahatchee, Florida, Andrew Mazzulli, KK4LWR of Claremont, Florida, Neil Schulmeyer, K4EA of Canton, Georgia, and Joseph Tiratelli, N4ZUW of Deerfield Beach, Florida. All of the candidates have been certified by the Ethics and Elections Commission for the election cycle for positions beginning January 1st, 2023. Full and licensed ARRL members of the Southeastern Division who are in good standing as of September 10th, 2022, will receive a ballot. Ballots will be mailed to members no later than October 1st, 2022, and will include instructions for voting by mail or electronically. Ballots to be counted must be reaching the address established for their return no later than noon Eastern Time on Friday, November 18th, 2022. Members voting electronically must submit their votes by the same time and date. Votes will be counted and successful candidates will be announced in November. I'm John Ross, KD8 IDJ.
The incumbents in the other 4 divisions running unopposed in this election cycle have been declared winners. In the Pacific Division, Director Kristen McIntyre, K6WX of San Jose, California, and Vice Director Anthony Marson, W7XM of North Las Vegas, Nevada, have been declared elected. In the Rocky Mountain Division, Director Jeff Ryan, K0RM of Westminster, Colorado, and Vice Director Dan Grady, N2SRK of Aurora, Colorado, have been declared elected. In the Southwestern Division, Director Richard Norton, N6AA of Topanga, California, and Vice Director Edward Stearns, AA7A of Scottsdale, Arizona, have been elected. In the West Gulf Division, Director John Robert Stratton, N5AUS of Austin, Texas, and Vice Director Lee Cooper, W5LHC of Lender, Texas, have been declared elected.
The Ohio Amateur Radio Emergency Service just completed a dry run exercise for the Perry Nuclear Power Plant in Lake County, Ohio. ARRL Ohio Section Emergency Coordinator Stan Broadway, N8BHL, said the drill was practice for the federally judged exercise scheduled for September. The Ohio Emergency Operations Center amateur station, W8SGT, was utilized and on the air to communicate with several counties in northeast Ohio. Amateur radio serves in the emergency planning as a backup communications resource. The actual exercise is focused more on the power plant and its operation, but the state EOC is involved for the process. In real life, this was a low-key type of exercise for us. It does not involve a lot of hams or activity, just establishes the line of communication, said Broadway. It's satisfying to know, through many conversations during the planning stage, that amateur radio is a key ingredient to assure communication with the state. Ohio ARRL is also working on a simulated emergency test drill for October 1st, 2022.
ARRL has introduced the 3rd edition of Get on the Air with HF Digital by Steve Ford, WB8IMY. The book written in an easy-to-understand style. It covers how to set up and operate your own HF digital station. Ford includes the details for making contacts using 11 different digital modes, including the Pactor system, as well as signal WSJT-X modes, VARA, and JS8 call. Join the millions of amateur radio operators worldwide studying propagation with WSPR, contesting with RTTY, and rag chewing with the JS8 call. You can order your copy from ARRL and ARRL publication dealers.
A forensic analysis of the collapse of the Arecibo radio telescope in 2021 has concluded that the problems in both the suspension cables and the socket that held them led to the failures that precipitated the collapse. The detailed study by engineering firm of Thornton Tomasetti reported that a combination of 5 major factors was responsible. They are, number 1, the manual and inconsistent splay of the wires during cable socketing. Number 2, the design of the cable system with relatively low safety factors. Number 3, the occurrence of extreme environmental events such as hurricanes and earthquakes. Number 4, the non-replacement, repair, or bypass of the sockets where large cable slips were observed. And number 5, the addition of auxiliary cables as isolated cables. The report concluded that while further study is needed to determine the service life of cable socket assemblies, the risk of socket failure can be mitigated by, number 1, controlling the number and geometry of splayed out wires during cable socketing. Number 2 and 3, designing cable systems with larger safety factors under gravity and transient loads. Number 4, monitoring the cable slip and slip rate after cable installation. And number 5, designing cable systems with multiple adjacent cables on each span.
Masonic Lodge's On the Air, an amateur radio special event, will be on the air Saturday, September 24th, 2022, from locations across the country. John Ross, KD8IDJ, has more.
The event is open to all amateur radio operators, and the idea for the event grew out of the realization that many Freemasons also have a love for amateur radio. The Fulton County Amateur Radio Club and the Fulton Lodge No. 248 in Ohio first hosted the event in 2021. Because of its success, the event now has been scheduled for the next 3 years. The event will be operating K8BXQ from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. using single sideband only on 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters. A reminder to please honor all band plans, and all contacts must be in the phone portion of the bands. Stations may be contacted once on each band. Full contest rules and information can be found at cqmorelight.com/rules. Bob Holstrom, KD2BKD, said the Masons in New York and New Jersey will be setting up stations at the historic museum grounds of the DeWint House. That's George Washington's headquarters in Tappan, New York. The property is owned and operated by the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the state of New York. A special event call sign for that location will be W2QX, operating from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Everyone is welcome to visit the historic DeWint House, said Holstrom. The house has been restored and admission is free. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
Once again, more information about the Masonic Lodges on the air and the official contest rules can be found at their website, cqmorelight.com. Visit the ARRL Special Events Stations database to find other on-air events and commemorations on the ARRL website.
You are listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, available as a podcast at our website, www.twiar.net, and streamed worldwide via Spotify and iHeartMedia.
The American Radio Relay League, the representative body of radio amateurs in the USA, and the FCC, the American Spectrum Regulator, created the Volunteer Monitor Program to enhance compliance with amateur radio license conditions. In their July report, the monitoring program sent notices to 2 logging companies in Kettle Falls, Washington, for unlicensed operation on 2-meter amateur radio frequencies. Volunteer Monitor Administrator Riley Hollingsworth, Kilo 4 Zulu Delta Hotel, said that commendations were issued to amateurs in New York for work in conducting the Community Daily Bulletin Board on the 146.97 MHz Mount Beacon repeater, and to amateurs in Pennsylvania for work with the Philmont Mobile Radio Club and involving the club in mesh Wi-Fi networking and field day operations. A commendation was also issued to an operator in Columbia, South Carolina, for facilitating amateur involvement in the Richland County Emergency Operations Center and assisting amateurs in completing Community Emergency Response Team programs. A technical class operator in Martinez, California, and a general class operator in Trenton, New Jersey, were issued with warning notices for FT8 operation on 40 and 20 meter frequencies outside their license privileges. General class operators in Massapequa, New York, and Trenton, New Jersey, were issued with warning notices for single sideband operation on 14.201 and 21.270 MHz. General class operators in the USA have no voice privileges below 14.225 and 21.275 MHz. An operator in Indian Hills, California, received a notice for unlicensed operation on 144.390 MHz simplex APRS during a high-altitude balloon operation. The regulator had cancelled their license over a year before the flight. The final totals for volunteer monitoring during June 2022 were 1,676 hours on HF frequencies and 2,099 hours on VHF frequencies and above, making a total monitoring time of 3,775 hours. You can read more at www.arrl.org.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. The first clause of the original Amateurs Code reads, "The amateur is gentlemanly. He never knowingly uses the air for his own amusement in such a way as to lessen the pleasure of others. He abides by the pledges given by the ARRL in his behalf to the public and the government. The 2022 ARRL Handbook version states it like this: "The radio amateur is considerate, never knowingly operates in such a way as to lessen the pleasure of others." Today, the ARRL website presents it as, "The radio amateur is considerate. He, she never knowingly operates in such a way as to lessen the pleasure of others." It's surprising to see the addition of the he, she pronoun when nothing is added by doing so. In fact, for some amateurs, this actually reduces its relevance, something which I've spoken about before. We could just simply change the words to remove the pronoun entirely, but does that actually cover all of what we want it to mean? Should this consideration be limited to operating, or should we go beyond that? What about conduct in a club setting, or on social media, email, or SMS? Some of these activities are conducted as a radio amateur and some are not. If we're limiting ourselves to amateur radio, not an unreasonable place to start given that we're talking about a document called the Amateur's Code, we should really discuss the nature of amateur radio today. I find myself in a community of amateurs, not a radio inside, exchanging thoughts, opinions, and experience that go beyond the concept of operating. I will note that there are legal definitions in our hobby that describe the notion of operating that do not include QRZ.com, email, or Reddit, and there is an argument to be made that operating falls strictly within the bounds of a licensed amateur activity. That said, since "No man is an island," first uttered in 1624 by John Donne, neatly illustrates that although we're licensed amateurs, we do more than key our radios alone, and even when we do, there are activities that affect others who are not operating as such. When we discuss things with each other, face-to-face, that's not a licensed activity, even if both of us are amateurs. Neither is sending an email to another amateur or commenting on a social media post. Standing in a club and teaching is also not a licensed amateur activity and cannot be considered under the idea of operating. All of what this clause is attempting to say is to be considerate. Don't reduce the pleasure of others by doing things that are unacceptable. It goes to how you are expected to be, to conduct yourself, to behave. To incorporate this idea that what you do with other amateurs goes beyond operating, I think the word operate needs to be changed to the word behave. I'd also like to explore the word gentlemanly from the original text. Synonyms for this include civilized, courteous, honorable, and polite, to name a few. It seems to me that words like that would benefit our interactions within our community, not to mention beyond it. One word that comes to mind is respectful, something that lies at the heart of how we conduct ourselves towards each other. So, if we drop the pronouns, update the word operates, and add in respect, a revised clause 1 could be, "The radio amateur is considerate and respectful, never knowingly behaving in such a way as to lessen the pleasure of others." Let me hasten to point out that I'm proposing this as a starting point for discussion. This is an activity that should go beyond one individual. It should also go beyond a single organization. Amateur radio is a global activity, and it would do well for us to consider all of humanity when drafting a code of conduct, which is essentially what the Amateur's Code is attempting to achieve. So, how would you approach the first clause? What do you like? What do you think is missing? What would it need for you to consider it words to live by? I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.
Fractal Antenna Systems today announced it has secured a patent on a method to detect invisibility cloaks and related stealth metamaterials, thus preventing hostile military assets from being hidden from radar and decreasing the potential for sparking conflicts. Detailed in a new U.S. patent, the cloak detection technique, dubbed LPAS, is a new radar method that looks for telltale signatures of cloaked objects that are made invisible by metasurfaces, including satellites, planes, vessels, or UAVs. At the frequencies where the cloak works, called its passband, radar tries to bounce signals back from the target, but the cloak stops that reflection, and the target remains hidden. Beyond the cloak's passband, radar transmitters are hampered by lower power limits and thus poor at pinging Cloak targets both in and out of a Cloak's passband. Inventor and firm CEO Nathan Cohen, W1YW, showed radar transmitters don't need to transmit outside of the passband, since metasurfaces have a failure mode that produces nonlinear, heterodyned RF hash. High-powered radar systems may be thwarted to detect targets that are cloaked in the passband, but their transmissions hit the target and excite this hash of heterodynes at much higher and lower frequencies where the cloak doesn't function and the target is not hidden. On receive, a radar antenna picks up these frequencies correlated with the transmitted signals, filters out most of the noise, and leads to a unique reflected signature of the target. In the past, radar was considered the trump card that succeeded at target detection, a task made difficult by stealth techniques. Because they are less expensive to implement than other radar stealth methods, metasurfaces are used extensively outside of the USA, highlighting the urgent need of LPAS as the remedy of Pandora's burden. Those countries that may seek a technical advantage by retrofitting war machines with metasurfaces to hide from radar now have to face a revision to their prior assumption of hidden assets. Cohen invented the Invisibility Cloak in 2003 and clearly saw the need to stop their destructive use by creating LPAS shortly after. The new patent is a public message that invisibility cloaks were not invented solely to be toys of war. Metasurfaces can do more than hide objects and have many useful applications. Cohen states the firm's recent patents on fractal license plates for satellites, enhanced radar road reflectors for autonomous vehicles, and smaller wideband directional antennas are a few of many positive spin-offs of his invisibility cloak and metasurface inventions. Metamaterials overall have a terrific future if we encourage their use in applications which improve the human condition and that promise of tomorrow.
You're listening to This Week in Amateur Radio on Finer Repeater Systems nationwide.
This week's AMSAT report news is here from Bruce Page, KK5DO. And do you have a subject related to amateur radio satellites that you would like to present at the AMSAT Symposium this year? Well, if you do, please mail the tentative title of your presentation to Dan, N8FGV, at n8fgv@amsat.org as soon as possible. The final copy is to be submitted by October 14th for inclusion in the symposium proceedings. And if you'd like to make contact with an astronaut, well, we can't guarantee you will. However, we can give you the tools to try and make it happen. First, you need to track where the International Space Station is located. And if you don't have a tracking program, head over to amsat.org and click on the satellite info and then past predictions. Now that you know where ISS is and when it's going to pass over your location, tune your radio to receive on 437.800 megahertz and transmit to 145.990 megahertz. And if you need to use two radios, that's okay. Next, just listen. There will be a lot of contacts being made by other hands when all of a sudden astronaut Kajel will start making random QSOs. Now is when you should listen closely. Keep in mind that the ISS operates on Moscow time, and Kajel will usually be on the air just before bedtime. That's going to be somewhere around 1800 hours, give or take an hour or so. If you hear him, try calling NA1SS when he finishes his QSO, and if you're lucky, you can make a contact. After that, there's only one more thing you should do, or maybe we say will want to do. That's head over to the ARRISS.org website and click on General Contacts and then QSL cards. You will most definitely want that proof for your wall. Remember now, do not call him unless you hear him on the air. He's not on the air on every pass.
Felix, EA4GQS, reports Spain's latest amateur radio satellites to launch will be Genesis G and Genesis J on September 11th, 2022. The AMSAT bulletin post says, "This is to confirm that the launch of our new Genesis G and Genesis J satellites with Firefly will take place, if all goes well, on September 11th, with the launch window starting at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, or 22 hours GMT, from Vandenberg Air Force Base. The expected orbit altitude is 300 kilometers with an inclination of 137 degrees. As many of you know, this will be the second attempt of Firefly to reach orbit after the first attempt made in September 2021, which had to be aborted after 2 minutes of flight, causing our previous Genesis N and Genesis L to be lost, among others. These new Genesis birds have a more powerful onboard computer than their predecessors and updated software that allows FM voice repeater functionality, AFSK and FSK non-regenerative repeater up to 2400 BPS, FSK regenerative repeater up to 50 BPS, CW, digitized voice pre-recorded FM, and FSK telemetry at 50 BPS. The correct retransmission of AX25 and APRS frames over FM up to 2400 BPS has been verified in the laboratory. A small drawback we still have is the antenna deployment mechanism. That is the first version that was made and requires a fully charged battery. The satellites have been stored for several months, so it's a weak point. Hopefully it will work. These satellites also have the names of Astroland 1 and Astroland 2 to say thanks to the sponsorship of the project by the Astroland Planetary Agency. We also thank the private companies and universities that helped in the project. As on the previous occasion, 2 experimental propellants are flown, although this time they are from the Madrid company IENAI Space and, unlike the previous Genesis mission, they use a liquid ionic fuel. Only the one from Genesis J is functional. The one from Genesis G carries the electronics, but without the fuel. The frequencies coordinated with IARU are the following: Genesis G/Astroland 1, 145.875 MHz uplink, modes, FM voice, no subtone, FSK 50 BPS, AFSK, AX25, APRS 1200/2400 BPS, 436.888 MHz downlink, modes, FM voice, CW, FSK 50 BPS, FM voice beacon with AM2 SAT call sign. Genesis J/Astroland 2, 145.925 MHz uplink. Modes, FM voice, no subtone, and FSK 50 BPS, AFSK, AX25, APRS 1200/2400 BPS, 436.666 MHz downlink. Modes, FM voice, CW, FSK 50 BPS, SSTV Robot 36, FM voice beacon with AM3 SAT call sign. We encourage all of you to try to receive their first transmissions once the first Keplerian elements are available.
It is time for the weekly propagation forecast report, brought to us each week by Tad Cook, K7RA in Seattle, Washington, who reports that on August 18th, a new sunspot group emerged, another on August 21st, and then 2 more appeared on August 23rd and 3 more on August 25th, when the sunspot number jumped to 94 from 46 the previous day. Total sunspot area more than doubled from Wednesday to Thursday. Solar activity overall was down slightly for the reporting week, August 18th through the 24th, with average daily sunspot numbers declining from 60.8 during the previous 7 days to 58.7, and the average solar flux from 123.7 down to 104.5. The planetary A-index changed from an average of 11.7 to 12.6, and the middle latitude A-index, measured at a single magnetometer in Virginia, was 11, after an average of 10 last week. As an indicator of rising solar activity a year ago, we reported average daily sunspot numbers at 17.7, 41 points below this week's report. The Thursday night forecast from the 557th Weather Wing at Offutt Air Force Base shows a probable peak of solar flux for the near term at 1:30 on September 11th and again on October 8th. So taking a look at the predicted solar flux, it will be 120 on August 27th, 115 on August 28th, 110 on August 29th and 31st, 110 on August 29th through the 31st, 115 on September 1st and 2nd, 116 on September 3rd and 4th, 112 on September 5th, and 108 on September 6th and 7th. So taking a look now at the predicted planetary A-index, it has some surprises in store. It will be 8 on August 27th and 28th, 10 on August 29th, 5 on August 30th and 31st, 8 on September 1st and 2nd, and then jumping way up to 30, 38, and 20 on September 3rd through the 5th. Then 15, 18, 10, 12, and back down to 8 on September 6th through the 10th.
In radio sport contesting, many opportunities for the days ahead. August 26th to the 28th, it's the Ridiops WWDX contest. That's digital. August 27th through the 28th, the ARRL EME contest, CW phone and digital there. August 27th through the 29th, the Hawaii QSO party, CW phone and digital. August 27th through the 28th, the VE Islands QSO party, CW and digital. August 27th through the 28th, the YODXHF contest, CW and phone. August 27th through the 28th, the Worldwide DigiDX contest, that's FT8 and the Force character grid. August 27th through the 28th, the Kansas QSO party, CW and phone. August 27th and 28th, the Ohio QSO party. And August 28th, the SARL HF CW contest, CW and phone. On August 30th, the Worldwide Sideband Activity Contest, that's phone. Then on September 1st, the NRAU 10-meter activity contest, CW phone and digital. And September 1st to the 3rd, the G3ZQS Memorial Straight Key contest. That, of course, is CW. And some upcoming section, state, and Invision conventions to keep in your plans. August 26th to the 28th, the Northeast Ham Exposition. That's hosting the ARRL New England and Hudson Division conventions. That's in Marlborough, Massachusetts. September 2nd through the 4th, the Shelby Ham Fest hosting the ARRL North Carolina Section Convention. That's in North Carolina, in Shelby, North Carolina. September 9th through the 10th, the Queen Wilhelmina Ham Fest hosting the ARRL Arkansas State Convention. That's in Mena, Arkansas. September 11th, the ARRL Southern New Jersey Section Convention in Mullica Hill, New Jersey. And on September 17th through the 18th, the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo online event. ARRL is a QSO Today partner.
You are listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, available as a podcast at our website, www.twiar.net, and streamed worldwide via Spotify and iHeartMedia.
ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, has announced the hiring of Steve Berry, N1EZ, into the new position of Director of Information Technology. He's from Bedford, New Hampshire, and has been a radio amateur for 45 years. For more details on the League's new IT director, we go to John Ross, KD8IDJ, who files this special report from League headquarters.
Berry began his 35-year IT career in software development with a wide range of environments from firmware to Unix device drivers and application development. While working for AT&T Bell Labs, now known as Nokia Bell Labs, as a network consultant, he built his first consulting firm focused on Unix, networking, and electronic publishing. After the acquisition of that firm, he worked in senior-level management positions within systems integration and consulting organizations before founding Stratford Technology in 1995. I'm pleased to welcome Steve into his new role at ARRL headquarters, said CEO Dave Minster, NA2AA. The position and its responsibilities are key to helping us achieve ARRL's ongoing digital transformation for the benefit of our members. As Director of Information Technology, Berry is responsible for the overall strategic and operational IT functions, including continuous evaluation and execution of processes, systems, applications, and infrastructure. Berry manages a team of professional IT contributors, including a development team and project leaders. Together, they fulfill a variety of technology services for the organization, such as corporate databases and systems, websites and web services, service support, and coordinating outside suppliers of technology services and contracted resources.
Berry Stratford offered business intelligence consulting services and eventually focused on delivering enterprise performance management solutions to Fortune 500 organizations based on Oracle Hyperion technology. In 2012, Berry and his team built the first Oracle Hyperion managed application hosting service on the Amazon Web Services platform. Stafford was acquired by Apps Associates in 2020. I feel truly honored to give back to ARRL and the hobby. Both have done so much for me, especially with the many friends I have made over the years and the ham mentors who gave me a start in my career, said Barry.
Mariam Ben Naki is not your usual teenager. Unlike most 13-year-old girls, she has a passion for fixing phones and computers. After school, Mariam can be found tinkering away in her family's workshop in Tbilisi, in the country of Georgia. Peering into a magnifying glass, Mariam connects tiny intercrate parts to breathe life back into defective devices. She said that she likes to replace the batteries or clean the fans, and replace the paste that is used for cooling down the computers. She concentrates hard on reconnecting the smallest pieces. Mariam's interest in electronics was sparked when she was 9 years old. Her stepfather, Thomas Burns, a former Hollywood cinematographer and self-proclaimed electronic nerd, was helping fix a friend's iMac computer. The colourful wires and shiny components instantly caught Mariam's eye. She recalled that when they took the screen off, there were lots of small parts that she was interested in. Also, wires were routed through the computer, and she was curious about them. She wanted to know how the computer worked. She asked her dad about what this was and what that was, and offered to help with the things that he was doing. With her father's help, Mariam replaced the iMac's hard drive. To cultivate and hone his daughter's interest, Thomas offered to fix more friends' and family's broken gadgets. Thomas said that Mariam was a naturally very curious person. He said he wished he could say that he inspired her to follow this path, but in reality it all came from her. For Thomas, the most important thing was that Mariam felt free to pursue her interests without any limitations, and that she's not afraid to feed her curiosity. It didn't take long for word to spread, and referrals started to flow in. Friends of friends began dropping off their broken hardware in the hopes the duo would restore them back to life. Thomas said that at some point they realized that they were just one Facebook page away from an actual business, and so they made it official, and now it's very much a full-time endeavor. The father-daughter team launched their family business and called it Mariam's Computer Repair. Not only is it projecting the fact that women can repair things, but it's also a point of pride for the family. Read the full story and watch a video at www.euronews.com and head for the culture section.
Pathways to Invention, a newly released documentary film directed and co-produced by a Santa Barbara, California amateur radio operator, has been chosen as Best Documentary Feature at the Los Angeles Independent Film Festival Awards. Levi C. Maia, K6 LCM, is both a teacher and a tinkerer who believes that technology can be a driving force to power education. A proponent of the maker movement, Levi and his production partner, Noah G. Mark, follow 10 emerging innovators on their journeys to become inventors. The film was made with the support of the Levinson Foundation. At the festival, the film also received awards for Best Producer, Best Original Music Score, and Best Director of a Documentary Feature. The film is to premiere later this year. Levi has been active on the Education Committee of Amateur Radio on the International Space Station. He's also a life member of AMSAT and a board member of the Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club.
JOTA, or Jamboree on the Air, and JOTI, known as Jamboree on the Internet, are the world's largest amateur radio scout event and are set to take place on October 14th through the 16th, 2022. The event connects millions of young people around the world for a full weekend of amateur radio and online activities that promote friendship and global citizenship. Using both the airwaves and the internet, JOTI and JOTA enable young people and volunteers to participate in fun and engaging group activities focused on developing 21st century skills through scouting. Jamboree on the Air is one of World Scouting's longest-running global events, dating back to 1958. JOTA and JOTI aims to support young people of all ages to learn about communications technology, the values of global citizenship, and their role in creating a better world. To register and learn more about both jamborees, both on the air and on the internet, visit their website at www.jotajoti.info.
In radio sport contesting, many opportunities for the days ahead. August 26th to the 28th, it's the Ridiops WWDX contest. That's digital. August 27th through the 28th, the ARRL EME contest, CW phone and digital there. August 27th through the 29th, the Hawaii QSO party, CW phone and digital. August 27th through the 28th, the VE Islands QSO party, CW and digital. August 27th through the 28th, the YODXHF contest, CW and phone. August 27th through the 28th, the Worldwide DigiDX contest, that's FT8 and the Force character grid. August 27th through the 28th, the Kansas QSO party, CW and phone. August 27th and 28th, the Ohio QSO party. And August 28th, the SARL HF CW contest, CW and phone. On August 30th, the Worldwide Sideband Activity Contest, that's phone. Then on September 1st, the NRAU 10-meter activity contest, CW phone and digital. And September 1st to the 3rd, the G3ZQS Memorial Straight Key contest. That, of course, is CW. And some upcoming section, state, and Invision conventions to keep in your plans. August 26th to the 28th, the Northeast Ham Exposition. That's hosting the ARRL New England and Hudson Division conventions. That's in Marlborough, Massachusetts. September 2nd through the 4th, the Shelby Ham Fest hosting the ARRL North Carolina Section Convention. That's in North Carolina, in Shelby, North Carolina. September 9th through the 10th, the Queen Wilhelmina Ham Fest hosting the ARRL Arkansas State Convention. That's in Mena, Arkansas. September 11th, the ARRL Southern New Jersey Section Convention in Mullica Hill, New Jersey. And on September 17th through the 18th, the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo online event. ARRL is a QSO Today partner.
You are listening to North America's premier news and information service for the amateur radio hobbyist. We are This Week in Amateur Radio.
Accompanied by their teacher Adrian, YO5IA, and other mentors, a group of young amateurs from the school radio club YO6 KGS in Romania set out from Ratio Village in late July for their latest adventure, a 4-day Summits on the Air expedition in the Jimalu Mountains. After watching demonstrations by Chaba, YO6 PIB, and Eva, YO6 EVA, who activated their first summit, Jimalu Peak, the students joined them on 20 meters and 17 meters. Ranging in age from 12 to 20, many of the students had gone on previous activations with the school club and their advisors. Mihela, YO5 MCM, could not be there in person this time, but made sure to chase the group from her QTH in Cluj, about 200 kilometers away. There was also a family reunion ham radio style as Nico, YO6 YLJ, made a summit-to-summit contact with his father, Mihai, YO6 SM, who is operating from Norway using the call sign LB9HI. Mihai was able to give the other students their chance for summit-to-summit contact too. Everyone spent comfortable nights in a mountain cottage, and by the final night they had earned some bragging rights. The whole team had activated Jiamalu Summit, YO/EC007, and logged summit-to-summit QSOs from Munsel, YO/EC527, to Jiamalu on VHF and UHF. Daria, YO6 CDC, wrote in her online diary that until the next time, we have the radio waves, the contests, the radio club where we meet, while the memories last forever.
Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society got free publicity for their upcoming Open Day by contacting their local newspaper. As a result, the Sidmouth Herald newspaper reported that the Society is holding an Open Day on Sunday, September the 4th at their new HQ in Sidford. The Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society, who are marking their 40th anniversary this year, are using the former Sidbury Football Club building behind the tennis courts in Byes Lane. It has space for up to 40 people to attend talks and has internet and Wi-Fi access. The Open Day runs from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. on September the 4th. On the day, the Society will be operating their club amateur radio station, call sign Golf Zero Alpha X-Ray Charlie, on both the VHF and HF parts of the radio spectrum. Tea and coffee will also be available. Anyone who holds an amateur radio call sign or is interested in obtaining a radio license is welcome to come and find out more about Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society. You can read the full article by going to www.sidmouthherald.co.uk. And the Sidmouth Amateur Radio Society is also on Facebook. If you're new to amateur radio, have a look at the article What is Amateur Radio by going to www.essexham.co.uk/What is Amateur Radio, and that's all hyphenated. What is Amateur Radio?
Amateurs throughout India and beyond have been marking that nation's 75 years of independence with special event stations and commemorative nets. Special event station AT75CW will be on the air using CW from September 1st through October 2nd from northern India. Rajesh VU2CW is the same operator who activated AT75 radio earlier this month on single sideband. Meanwhile, the Indian YLNet on the India Conference server on Echolink marked the nation's independence with a series of guest net control operators during the week of Monday, August 15th. Guest net controllers on this daily net included Dr. S. Satyapal, VU2FI, Director of the Indian Institute of Hams, using the call sign AU5IIH, and Prakash Kiyani, VU2KOC, who runs a popular net in India. He used the call sign AU75KOC. India officially marked its independence on Monday, August 15th.
Norway's National Amateur Radio Society, NRRL, reports at its recent annual general meeting there weren't many online attendees and even fewer attended in person. A translation of the NRRL post reads, NRRL's annual general meeting 2022, which was held both physically in Haugesund and digitally via Teams, can be said to have been a successful event where the Hagalen-Gruppen was an excellent host for the physical part of the general meeting. Apart from a few minor slips and some waiting sometimes, it all went very well technically. Despite the fact that the meeting allowed digital participation, there were relatively few digital participants and even fewer physically present in Haugesund. The physical part of the general meeting, in terms of travel expenses, hotel accommodation, meeting room hire, diet, etc., costs NRRL relatively much, especially if the costs are compared to the number of people who physically attended. In upcoming meetings, NRRL's Executive Board HQ will discuss whether future general meetings can be held entirely digitally or whether the meetings should continue as a combination of a physical and a digital meeting as now in 2022. Technically, the digital part of the general meeting could well have been driven from NRRL's office in Oslo at very minimal costs. Headquarters will have to set this cost picture against the possible benefits NRRL may have as an organization by also offering physical participation during the organization's future general meetings.
Members of the Alabama Contest Group will be carrying the message 9/11, remembered once more, during a special event being activated to honor the victims of terrorism who perished 21 years ago in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Stations will be using the call sign K4A starting at 0001 UTC on September 8th and running through to September 12th, operating on all bands and using CW, SSB, FT8, and RTTY. Organizers are expecting many hams to be calling in with stories of remembrances from September 11th, 2001. Planners have been busy on the Discord chat app making a schedule that will be accessible to amateurs worldwide. An extra effort will be made on CW and FT8 to help Pacific DX operators, especially in VK and ZL, to make contacts. Certificates will be available in addition to QSL cards. QSOs are needed on 4 bands in any combination of modes to qualify for a certificate. Outside of North America, only 3 bands are needed. According to the QRZ page for K4A, This event recognizes peace-loving people all over the world. Visit the page for K4A or WA1FCN on QRZ for more details.
You're listening to This Week in Amateur Radio, available as a podcast at our website, www.twiar.net, and streamed worldwide via Spotify and iHeartMedia.
And now, to conclude his 6-part series on how to write a public service announcement to successfully promote your club's activities on local broadcast stations, here is Indiana's own Greg Stoddard, KF9MP.
In this 6th segment on the topic of promoting your not-for-profit ham radio club's events, we'll look into some hints and suggestions for getting your public service announcement on the air for free. In the broadcast industry, a common business practice is what they call trade. Radio stations trade ads for services. They trade airtime for products and services. Some stations trade advertising airtime for perks like free meals for station employees at local restaurants, free gas at gas stations for ads, office equipment and computers for ads, and more. You can use this to your advantage, too. When you are able to create the ultimate PSA script, the next thing to accomplish is to get it recorded professionally, and here's where the trade comes in. First off, it is not advisable to get a present or recently passed local DJ or announcer to record your PSA, since other radio stations are not likely to broadcast a competitor's voice. Unless you have a club member with professional sound gear at home who can produce it, record it, and produce CDs or reel-to-reel tapes for your club, your next best bet is to research trade. Many radio stations buy or trade for professional voice services. They email or fax scripts and get tapes or CDs in the mail a week or so later. You may be able to get your local station to have this done along with theirs at no cost, since they typically pay a monthly fee which does not change with usage. Some stations have local folks they hire and pay like $20 to come in and voice some commercials once a month or so. These folks may be willing to do yours, too, at no extra cost. All this will require some sort of relationship with the local radio station, which can start with something as simple as inviting them to your next club meeting, personally tutoring them or a family member through your technician test classes and VE session, or a few free tickets to your next Hamfest. You could also offer to trade Hamfest table space for a professionally recorded PSA for your next Hamfest. Anyway, trade is something common in the broadcast industry, so use it to help promote your club. This is Greg Stoddard, KF9MP, reporting for This Week in Amateur Radio.
National POW and MIA Recognition Day 2022 will be observed on September 16th, and special event station K4MIA will be operating from a restored Bell UH-1H Iroquois helicopter from September 10th through the 18th. The aircraft is the first generation of utility helicopters used in Vietnam and earned the nickname Huey. In addition to K4MIA, there will be 5 other stations in operation on September 16th. They are K4MIA/2, K4MIA/4, K4MIA/5, K4MIA/7, and K4MIA/8. The stations will operate on single sideband, CW, FT8, and satellite. K4MIA will be on the air throughout the month using slow scan TV and EME, or Earth, Moon, Earth. QSL cards will be available via a self-addressed stamped envelope sent to K4MIA, Michael N. Bald, 6758 Hall Boulevard, Loxahatchee, Florida, 33470. National POW and MIA Recognition Day is observed every year on the third Friday in September. This day honors those who are prisoners of war and those who are still missing in action from all wars and conflicts, but is most associated with those who were POWs during the Vietnam War. Visit the K4MIA listing on QRZ for further details. and the ARRL Special Events Station database to find other on-air events and commemorations at www.arrl.org.
And finally this week, here comes a good old down south style QSO party. In coastal Mississippi, exactly 40 miles north of the Gulf of Mexico and 10 miles west of the Alabama state line, lies the friendly little town of Loosedale, Mississippi, founded in 1901 with a population of 24,762. Right in the heart of downtown Loosedale, on the corner of Mill and Main, you'll find a 4x4 wooden notched post known as the Scratchin' Post. From 1937 until 1993, there was a very popular 24-hour restaurant at that site known as the Coffee Pot, renowned for its 5-inch tall meringue pies. The restaurant is long gone, a victim of progress and rerouted highways, but the Scratchin' Post still stands tall. And on Saturday, September 3rd, George County Aries will put it on the amateur radio map with the Scratchin' Post QSO party. You may be asking, why is it called the Scratchin' Post? It was a tradition when entering and exiting the restaurant to scratch your back against the post. Several famous spines found comfort in rubbing up against that hunk of wood. Baseball legend Dizzy Dean, country music legends Tennessee Ernie Ford and Ernest Tubbs, actors Kirk Douglas, Gene Autry, and Roy Rogers, even Ronald Reagan in his Hollywood days, as well as Tom Lester, known as Ebb on Green Acres. You can scratch that radio itch by listening for K5K on 20 and 40 meters phone, as well as FT4 and FT8. Operating hours are 1300 to 2300 UTC on Saturday, September 3rd. They will be operating field day style from the downtown city park. If you're in that neck of the woods, stop by and enjoy some fine southern hospitality. Everything you need to know, as well as a picture of the Scratchin' Post, can be found on the K5K QRZ page. Sounds like the perfect excuse for a QSO party.
This Week in Amateur Radio is holding open auditions for news anchors for the weekly national worldwide amateur radio news service. If you have a good radio voice and can reliably read provided news copy, we are looking for you. This, of course, is an all-volunteer position. An amateur radio license is not required. You must have a high-quality microphone, headset mics are not used, and be familiar with audio editing software to record and edit your finished news stories before uploading. If you would like to try out for a weekly or bi-weekly anchor position with North America's premier amateur radio news on air and podcast, please send an email to our producer, George, W2XBS. You can include a sample MP3 of yourself reading news copy sent as an attachment to W2XBS77@gmail.com. That's whiskey, the number 2, X-ray Bravo Sierra 77 @gmail.com. Be sure and use Anchor Audition in the subject line. Please include your phone number and a good window of time for a callback to discuss your submission and our operating logistics to see if This Week in Amateur Radio is a good fit for you. We hope to hear from you soon. This Week in Amateur Radio is heard on nets and repeaters around the country and around the world, on great repeater systems like WA3PBD repeater system, on Thursday evenings at 7:30 p.m. on 146.730 and 223.940, covering all of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and beyond. Many of the news and information items heard on this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio have been provided by the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL Audio News Service, and the ARRL Letter, the Southgate Amateur News Service, Steve Richards, G4 Hotel Papa Echo, and the Southgate Vibes News Service, AMSAT, the Radio Amateurs of Canada, the FCC, the Radio Society of Great Britain, and Ofcom, the South African Radio League, the International Amateur Radio Union, the Wireless Institute of Australia, and the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters, the Amateur Radio Newsline, the Rain Hamcast, Eric Guth, 4Z1UG and QSO Today, QRZ.com, the Tech Guy, Leo Laporte, the International Telecommunications Union, and various news sources on the Internet.
With special thanks to all our weekly news sources and to you, our listeners, that wraps up this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. If you would like to write to us, you can find everything you need, including archive editions of the news service, at our website at twiar.net. And now, for all of us at This Week in Amateur Radio headquarters and all our news team around the world, this is Will Rogers, K5WLR in Fayetteville, Arkansas, wishing you 73.